Alright, hello friends. I recently interviewed artist Bryan Shickley about his projects related to a mysterious, strange, and sometimes outlandish character named Fred Crisman. As such, I felt it was my responsibility to clarify my thoughts about Crisman, as well as to provide a brief introduction to those who have never heard of the man. So, for those who are unaware, Fred Crisman is a controversial character among that circle of people, which is generally a small circle, who care about such fringe topics. Specifically, two historical events have kept Crisman alive in the historical record, even up to today of 2021. So the first of those events was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Fred Crisman emerged as a character in that story because he has been identified as one of the three tramps that were arrested near the assassination scene. Those tramps were quickly released and never heard from again. Some assassination theorists, and I personally am not a big JFK assassination researcher, historian, theorist, or whatever, but some assassination theorists and researchers have suggested that the three tramps were somehow involved in the operation to kill JFK, if such an operation existed. The second event that has kept Crisman's identity alive in history and in popular consciousness is the Maury Island UFO incident of 1947. This event happened on a small island not far offshore of Tacoma, Washington. That UFO incident has been widely debunked, but then there were people who debunked the debunkers and kind of exist in a gray zone right now. I still remain basically neutral on the matter, though I do believe the strongest evidence points to it being a hoax. If so, what a great hoax it was. I mean, it's still talked about today. It's actually been celebrated by, I think it was the mayor of Seattle, and it remains some of the most beloved local lore in the Puget Sound Basin, even now to today in 2021. And one of the reasons I withhold final judgment on whether or not I believe it's real is because I love the story so much. So I just like to keep it open and have fun with it. So those are the two incidents that Fred Crisman is best known for. But as anyone who has investigated Crisman knows, the more you look into his life, the more bizarre it becomes. I've called Crisman a living rabbit hole of strangeness. Shickley had a better way of saying it. He called Crisman the Forrest Gump of conspiracy theories, which is absolutely brilliant because the really fascinating thing about Crisman is that he had this way of popping up all over the country when strange events were going down. He had this way of his name just pops up in various places in all kinds of weird scenarios. So I can't speak about Crisman for very long without laughing, because no matter what the answer to the riddle is, the man managed to live one of the most truly inscrutable, fascinating lives I've ever encountered. And I love history. I love weird history the most. I've read about a lot of strange characters, and Crisman is on another level. Love him or hate him, he was a truly unique character. But my laughter is never meant to be derisive or dismissive, and one of my motivations for writing this statement is to make that clear. See, a reoccurring Crisman theme is patriotism, by which I mean, in this particular case, a deep faith in the fundamentals of America, meaning freedom, capitalism, and a free democratic system. Did I say capitalism? Yes, I did. Capitalism has a clear moral philosophy and ethical framework, just as socialism and any other economic ideology has a clear moral philosophy and ethical framework. One can agree or disagree with that underlying framework, but the fact that people don't understand it, or, more commonly, the fact that people don't think it exists at all, is more of an indictment of the failure of the American education system than it is an indication of the non-existence of that framework. Capitalism is not just a synonym for greed. There's a lot more to it, and it has never been properly taught in public schools in America, which I find exceedingly strange. But anyway, so Crisman, in all of his various sublets of strangeness, was always trying to defend America. In a way, he never stopped fighting for his country even after World War II ended. And I forget if I mentioned Crisman is a World War II veteran, which is a large reason why I am recording this and writing this down. But Crisman was vehemently anti-socialist and passionately pro-American. And this will impact what I say later. So the Crisman story that introduced me and interested me interested me and introduced me to Crisman was actually a lesser known one. It stemmed from a book titled Murder of a City, Tacoma, which was published in 1977, in which detailed the political information war that occurred in the late 1960s in Tacoma, Washington. I was living in Tacoma a couple years ago, and I came about Crisman via that route. I was just looking for weird local history, and I found this book. I'm probably one of the few people to ever discover Crisman that way. I mean, most people come upon him through the JFK and Maury Island stories. But for me, it was actually Murder of a City was my first introduction. I had no idea at first that he was tied into the JFK assassination, or that he was supposedly tied into it. Nor had I heard about the Maury Island incident at that point. So the way I discovered him might alter the way I ultimately see him and judge him. I'm not sure, but it might. So Murder of a City, Tacoma was written by Crisman, but he published it under the pseudonym of John Gold. The book tells his side of a real historical event. In that event, Crisman used his position as a radio station host to wage an information war against the existing political establishment. That establishment did end up being overturned, which is an important thing to recognize. Crisman appears to have been at least somewhat effective in his information war. Obviously, that's hard to assess. There's all kinds of variables and influences going on in election. But Crisman does appear to have had some success with his show. But my goal is not to dive into any particular Crisman field with any depth, nor to defend any particular interpretations of any particular events. My goal is instead to make a statement about my general ideas of Fred Crisman, which I've arrived at after spending an inordinate amount of time studying the man. So, as far as I can tell, there are 4 primary frames through which to view Fred Crisman. There is evidence to support each of these conclusions, but I will not be going into any of that evidence, as doing so is outside the scope of this video and would take a very long time. The 4 most likely frames, as I see them, are 1. Crisman was just a con man, slightly shady at best, truly nefarious at worst. 2. Crisman was a joker, possibly with some emotional issues from World War II. He just liked having fun and playing tricks on people. Frame 3. Crisman was some kind of intelligence operative engaged in disseminating disinformation and misinformation. Options here would include his being an active member of some OSS-affiliated body, a corporate spy, or someone who had informal intelligence connections from his time in World War II and who operated with some kind of network on an informal and unofficial basis. Frame number 4. Crisman was a full-blown alien experiencer, a man dialed into a parallel reality existing beside our reality, and he's just a victim of the fact that his life actually was that crazy. Okay, and so there's no way for me to know which of these possibilities is the correct one, but my way of looking at Crisman ultimately and my feelings of how Crisman is treated by researchers remain the same no matter which of these interpretive frames is correct. So Crisman was a World War II veteran. As such, I believe he deserves respect and dignity, as well as the benefit of the doubt, unless and until contrary evidence arises that is so overwhelming that the man can no longer be reasonably defended. In the absence of such clear evidence, I choose to treat Fred Crisman and his legacy with respect, even where I can't help but laugh at the madness of it all. I also feel a certain level of kinship with Crisman. I'm a veteran, and I know how difficult it can be to adjust back to regular day-by-day society after returning from war. Additionally, I think that Crisman's legacy has not been fairly updated to meet the new evidence we now have regarding the real situation in which he was living. What I am talking about is the evidence we now have that there was a real and legitimate Soviet communist intelligence campaign being waged in the United States as part of the Cold War. Much of Crisman's activities and statements have been written off as the rantings of a fanatic, which could be true. But to look at these claims in a fair and balanced way, we need to at least acknowledge the new research that has emerged since then to indicate that Crisman was not necessarily paranoid or fanatic. Books like the Venona Project, for instance, have provided solid evidence on the cultural Cold War is another book, several books. Actually, anybody watching this, you want some suggestions for books, tell me, I'll put them in the comment box. There is plenty of evidence that there really was this intelligence war going on during the Cold War. And it was not just a matter of spying. Like, even back then, people assumed that it was all about spies, but it wasn't. It was really a battle of social engineering, misinformation, and disinformation. And when people discuss Crisman, I don't think they fairly take that into account. Maybe he simply was tapped into, maybe he was simply witnessing things that most people didn't realize were happening. There's no way to know that, right? But it is a possibility. And as we look at the guy, I think it's only fair to take in the latest historical scholarship and look at him in that light, right? I think he and many of the people from that era are treated unfairly when people discount the modern scholarship that has turned up. But, okay, so there has been a disinformation and misinformation war happening just below the surface of daily life for a very, very long time. And we are only now just starting to see it emerge, like Leviathan from the sea, as we live in this wild modern world where narratives reign over facts. I think that part of the reason for this continued misunderstanding stems from the fact that many journalists and academics of the Soviet era were Soviet sympathizers, either covertly or overtly, who defended Stalin and the Soviet Union right up to the point where evidence of the regime's atrocities became undeniable. And some continued to support the Soviets even after that. That is also the reason that today, or there's also the reason I believe that today, if someone flies a Nazi flag, they will rightfully and immediately be ostracized from polite society. But people can fly a hammer and a sickle all the time, despite the fact that the Soviets committed atrocities every bit as horrible as the Nazis did. And that is a double standard that flies by daily consciousness, and nobody stops to think how bizarre that is. But anyway, regardless of all that, my point is that Crisman and his legacy should be viewed in the light of all of these facts. Looking at him without acknowledging that he really was living in such a world and that his military experience might have made him aware that he was living in such a world is unfair and inaccurate. Whatever assessment is made of Crisman, the general vision of the world in which he was in should at least be looked at accurately. So, that concludes my personal statement on how I look at Fred Crisman and how I choose to assess him and his legacy. He's an utterly fascinating person with an utterly bizarre story, and I can't help but laugh when I think about the man, just as I laughed at Shickley's idea for Crisman, the comic books that he's making, which are just brilliant in my opinion. I can't wait for Shickley's Crisman comic book series to come to light, just as I can't wait to share my interview, the interview that I did with Shickley regarding Crisman. But in the meantime, I wanted to make this brief statement about how I view the man. If I ever see evidence to convince me that he was up to something evil or even just harmful, I'll heed it. Until then, I'll continue to treat the memory of Fred Crisman with respect, even if I can't stop laughing when I talk about the guy. That's my statement on Crisman. Thank you very much. This will also act as my intro to my interview with Brian Shickley, which I will transition to now. All right, hello friends. My guest today is comic book artist, filmmaker, and animator Brian Shickley. Shickley's specialty is taking tales of conspiratorial weirdness, largely from Washington state history, and crafting them into entertaining fictionalized comics and movies. This is how Shickley and I first came into contact. Shickley asked me about a book titled Murder of a City Tacoma. I own a copy of this rare and strange book and have written about it in the past. The book represents one part of the saga of World War II veteran Fred Crisman, who I have previously described as a living rabbit hole of weirdness. Crisman has been associated with everything from the JFK assassination to the Maury Island UFO incident of 1947. As anyone who digs into Crisman's life knows, those are only two highlights in one of the most inscrutable and bizarre stories ever told. Crisman's story only gets stranger the deeper you dig into it, and Mr. Shickley has most definitely been digging. When dealing with Crisman, most people I've encountered will stop at the obvious strangeness of the JFK and Maury Island stories, Shickley, however, wasn't satisfied with that. He's been digging deep into the stranger parts of Crisman's story, and those are some of the things that we'll be discussing today. So, if you are into art and what it means to be a working artist, you've come to the right place. Likewise, if you're into high strangeness, as the great John Keel liked to call it, you've also come to the right place. If you're into both, there's probably no other place you'd rather be than right here. So, with no further ado, hello, Brian, and thank you for stopping by.
I think that about says it all.
So Brian and I were actually already we got talking about Crisman. He's one of those people. We just already got talking, so we had to jump in to start recording because it was about to start coming out. So all right, first what I would like to start with, though, because this does tie to Fred Crisman, congratulations on the sneak secret film premiere that you did December 10th, I believe it was.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you want to talk about that for a minute?
I got a whole wall I could talk about with that, but so I've been working. Where do I even start? So Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola, let's go that far back. He used to say, The Secret is a good documentary about him, Hearts of Darkness, where they say what Coppola did is he just starts making the movie, and then, excuse me. Oh, so go over there. You're silly. Coppola would always start making the movie, and then people would follow along, kind of like Kermit the Frog, you know, where it gets a little more friendly along the way when you show what kind of effort you're putting in. And I'd already largely finished the animation when I contacted Scott Schaefer, he was my mentor in Big Picture. Big Picture is an alternative education high school. So we did internships every other, Tuesday and Thursday. And he wrote for Bill Nye the Science Guy. If you ever saw Penn and Teller's Bullshit, he did some of the field directing.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And
he was the head of this program?
He helps me put together screenings.
Okay.
And you might know him and Steve Edmiston. They were on Ancient Aliens recently. They were, not that that's a sign of quality, but they did the Maury Island incident, the live action movie, if you've ever seen it.
I have. Yes, I have. It's excellent. Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, I am so sorry about him. Also, calm down. Hang on.
Okay. No worries.
I'm in a big interview, and you're being a little goofball. You're going away, mister.
It's a beautiful dog.
I hope you can't edit that out.
Yeah. It's a beautiful dog.
Oh, thank you so much. It's our first.
Yeah, I will. I'll just edit that out. No problem.
Oh.
But all right. So the live action Maury Island, the movie.
Yeah, so I was starting college when that came out, and it kind of shows where we were in history. Is Scott had an iPad. He had like the Gen 1 or whatever it was, and we're looking at software. He's like, you should storyboard for the movie. Couldn't barely do it. You had those styluses that resembled your fingertip. You know what I mean? The capacitive ones, and we could barely get art out. And I think they ended up shooting the movie without boards. But then technology caught up to such a point that we started looking into the movie and we're like, what didn't work? And I think what largely failed the movie is that it was live action. So when you get to the UFOs, those UFOs look amazing compared to Ancient Aliens. Ancient Aliens doesn't even look like a PlayStation 2 game in terms of recreations. But I think they needed more, they just needed more time and they needed more budget to get that look down. Also, how do you make a UFO look good?
Well, what I can say, just as somebody who watched the film and really admired it, I probably watched. I bought it, so I think I probably watched it 5 times. Mm-hmm. I personally loved it, and the special effects in general aren't too important to me, but with this in particular, it wasn't really important to me. I thought they really condensed the story really well, and I really like. Well, I guess I should say I thought you guys, because you were part of it, and I really liked how they handled the Men in Black aspect of it. I thought that was really well done.
I like him a lot. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the shots once they're in the Tin Room Bar, which is a real place you can go to, that's actually where they held their first screenings, I believe. they that actor is fantastic, and I've done no effort to to get you his name, but he was wonderful, and they found him last second. So I actually do have a list of stuff I'd like to talk about, and if you want me to just jet through it, and then you can just cut around me, and then we just go to what you want to do. I think that might make it easier to condense. When we were writing this, I have a friend, SP McDonald, who we had read about Crisman after looking at Maury together and seeing the finished product. And it said he fought space aliens in a cave. And we said, how is that not a movie?
Right.
Yeah. And what's weird is I helped him move at the time. And the exit is the exit right next to McCord Field, where the what is it? The B-52 took off with the quote unquote UFO. Who knows what they actually had in there? But that's where they took off from. Then they had the Crisman evidence. The other part of this is we're looking into if we could get any. Do you know about his KAYE radio connections?
Not in detail.
He kind of like a proto Rush Limbaugh, Alex Jones. He had a radio show on KAYE.
That was
radio.
from the Murder of a City, right?
Yeah, and boy, what really doesn't do Murder of a City justice is that he tries to sound credible. So he mentions nothing about UFOs at all.
Yeah,
I finally got a hold of that book. Anyway, I was looking up that radio station and I found an audio clip from it. And this guy's like, "Hey, my grandpa, he was a DJ at this radio station. Can the YouTube system, the copyright claim system, find the song? I want to know what it is." And I looked it up. His last name was Crisman. And at this point, the movie's almost done. And I find him on, however I find him. And I'm, "Hey, your grandpa's not named Fred, is he?" And he's like, "Yeah, here's the Wikipedia article. That's my grandpa." And I was like, "I got to talk to you." And I don't know how much of this I'm going to divulge. He put his name in the credits. His name's Alec Crisman. He's really cool kid.
And this was Fred Crisman, or this was Fred Crisman's grandson?
This is Fred Crisman's grandson.
Okay.
So I met this kid, Alec Crisman. He's not much older than me, probably in his 20s. And he actually, in the movie, he plays the radio host at the very beginning of KAYE.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was a Crisman.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. And I talked to him on the phone a little bit, and his mouth was just wide open seeing the movie. And it was just a really, really wonderful experience. Instead of him saying, "Let me call my lawyer," it was very, "It's as true as anything else you said."
Right.
And I talked to his dad for an hour, who is Fred Crisman Jr. And he actually gave me some photos. I don't know if I'm allowed to give them out yet, but they're Ken Thomas doesn't have these photos. All these famous conspiratorial people were not given they weren't given this much information before.
And you know what's really cool about that? Just to interject real quick. I actually met with a gentleman. I can't remember his name now. His name's Michael something, but he's known as Tacoma's premier local historian. He's a professional historian who specializes in local area.
That's cool.
I had lunch with him for a couple hours and asking him all about Crisman. And one of the things he specifically said was that Crisman was really skilled at not allowing people to take pictures of him. And so
really?
Yeah. And so they have very, very few pictures of him. He said that's why almost anything you see about Fred Crisman has the same two photos, which I know exactly the ones I'm talking about, right? There's
it looks like a Bigfoot sighting when you see that picture.
Yeah. So that's really cool that you got more photos. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's it. That's all I had. I got lucky enough to find out I nailed it when I drew him though, and he looks almost exactly like how I pictured.
Yeah.
So that was cool, but the movie is already done. If he didn't look like that, I would have been kind of screwed.
And when is that film due to come out in completion?
I think it's coming out in May. Scott and Steve want me to hold off a little bit on revealing too much about it.
Okay.
But I'm going to give you a small piece of footage if you want to put it up.
Oh, man. Hell yeah.
I'd love to give you screenshots. Just cool stuff that I haven't given out yet.
Yeah, dude, that'd be
and
awesome.
just the last thing on my thing is just the animation aspect. Being an animator, I get out of college and you're just on your own. And we live in a market where they want you to do your product faster and cheaper every time. Faster, cheaper, faster, cheaper. But they want it to look like a Pixar movie. And if you know anything about the triangle of quality, that's just very hard to accomplish. So
no, I freelance write and freelance edit, man. I encounter the same exact thing. It's like, you can't have it all, man. You got to pick two.
You're a resource.
Yeah,
yep, you're a resource, and they gotta get their best. They gotta get the best value out of you. And I was working on the animation, and I was seeing people say, "Well, there's an honor in redrawing it. If you don't get the poses you want, you redraw it, and over and over." And I started redrawing scenes 2 or 3 times. I was like, this is going to take the rest of my fucking life. So I have a friend who vaguely looked like Crisman. I was like, do you want to be in my movie? And he said, yeah. And he actually does most of the rotoscope work for the movie. You'll see there's this really cool sequence where he escapes a cave and he's like jumping on rocks. And I just filmed him and I crunched it down into an MP4.
Oh, wow.
And I drew Crisman and I kind of tracked the head like I would draw Crisman. And then I would do the body motions were all him. So there's scenes in the movie that when you want to get that intricate, like he shoots his ray gun and all sorts of cool stuff. That's all. It seemed like a film anyway. So that's all mostly rotoscope. So it's this neat little combination. There's rotoscope and then there's a little bit of CGI. There's a sky fight sequence. Just anything that I couldn't do in a normal cartoon that should have been done a long time ago. I had this wonderful chance to make it happen.
Man, that's really cool. So is this, I'm not trying to ask you to reveal too much. Is this centered primarily on the Maury Island incident, or is it more of an overview generally of Fred Crisman's life?
It covers the little article in Amazing Stories, Encounter in the Caves.
Okay.
Where he talks about the hole in his shoulder, which actually I have heard, I think, my 3rd version of that story. We found a record of him saying he's had that since high school. If you know about the hole in his shoulder. But what's crazy about it, one story it's from high school, one it's from the Deros, and then the 3rd one, he was walking up on an airbase and he said he just felt like he got sucker punched. And he got up and realized that there was a Japanese soldier who sniped him in the shoulder and apparently was aiming at someone with a far higher rank than him. I don't know how true that it could be as true as the Darrow shooting him. Who knows? But right. I like he really likes to place himself in history in these random spots. And then there's no consistency and you just it's multiple choice. You get to pick and choose.
You know,
anyway, that's all I had.
My buddy, who's also a Crisman fanatic, he found a newspaper article. You might be aware of this, but Crisman was a high school teacher somewhere around here in the Pacific Northwest. I forget exactly where, but he got fired. And in the news article, it cites specifically that he was fired for starting a secret society among the students.
Yeah, I asked about that. That was one of the big questions. We're like, why did he get fired?
That's what you were asking that question in relation to. Okay.
His dad supposedly, I was talking to Fred Jr. He said it was something along the lines of like a right-wing John Birch society. I guess it is just a right-wing. I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know much about John Birch Society.
The John Birch Society was like an anti-communist league back. I think it was the 60s. Okay. It might have been around longer than that, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
So their whole thing was like during the McCarthy era when there was all the Red Scare and everything, the John Birch Society was like a big group that was really vehemently anti-communist.
Okay. I did also hear that Crisman was such a right-wing person, he made the Minutemen look like hippies. That was a quote from his dad. Yeah. The other thing is
that's from his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just also want to bring up another thing that I learned is if you've read Murder of a City, there's a good line in it where he says, "I want to make it very clear that I investigated the Better Business Bureau before they started investigating me, which I don't even know what that means, but you don't sound innocent when you say that. And it's so much fun to pick the history out of this. And I was looking into it, and a lot of what he said, very extreme. He was largely right about they wanted to gentrify the city and put some of the money in their pockets. And I don't think it was as extreme as Crisman was saying, but there are articles like Crisman hates sensitivity training and things like that, where why does he matter? Why would that even be if you made an article, Bryan hates sensitivity training, why would that be important?
Right.
So he really was just poking people. Oh, the other thing, Servants of Awareness, I found out he has a box. He had a box of like letterheads and all sorts of stationery he would get from estate sales. If someone didn't like his opinion, he would write from another person, like, my name is Steve Jeffries from Servants of Awareness. So that's where that connection comes in. There's all sorts of weird things. He just happened to have a piece of paper and would mail just an angry letter to serve his own purposes.
You know what is so fascinating about that? Uh-huh. So I was looking into the Servants of Awareness, and I've researched them quite a bit. And I've had some people contacted me who were actually early members, because the group evolved over time. But initially, it was called maybe it was initially the Organization of Awareness, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Now I'm actually in contact with the woman who runs it, and I think now they're very sincere. I am friends with her. I have nothing but trust in her. But back then, there were definitely shady, weird aspects to it, and the weirdest thing that has come out is, it was started by a guy named William Ralph Doobie, who was also a World War II veteran, just like Crisman. And and he actually was in the Bataan Death March, which is a very brutal segment of World War II. And that much can be verified because there's records of that. But dude, what the people told me who were involved, well, at least one of them told me, and then there was, I don't want to hijack, but there's been more.
No, go ahead.
More validation for this being possibly a legitimate idea. It's not just from one person. But it's possible that there was like an imposter, or that there were two people pretending to be the same guy. And it's really weird. And they were grifting people out of money, obviously. But they also were distributing LSD at a very early time, which to me always smacks of the possibility of MK Ultra, not definite, but the possibility. And so that in itself is its own rabbit hole. And the fact that Crisman was like orbiting that rabbit hole, these two rabbit holes are orbiting, like, it's really weird, I
know. He's the Forrest Gump of conspiracy theories. We need to CGI him into all these weird documents. Yeah. You ever heard that one before? I'm not going to
steal that from you because that's too good, but you need to use that one, man. That's perfect.
Use that as the name of the article or something. I really like that. A couple of people have come to me with, he's the Forrest Gump of conspiracy theories. I'm like, he is.
He is. He's just everywhere. He's every significant place he pops up, or supposedly pops up.
On that note, actually, his I was talking to his dad about it. There's such a paper trail of this guy. And I think the secret, and this is good if you're doing animation or film marketing, put yourself everywhere. It doesn't matter what you do, everywhere. Crisman was everywhere. He would talk to anyone who would listen. And that paid off for him in spades, in the fact that he now, there's this weird backup of information on him, and it never quite adds up, but he's everywhere. If you Google him, he's everywhere for like 2 seconds. I asked his dad, I asked his son. I asked Fred Crisman's son, Fred Crisman. I asked him if he was ever in the paper, and he's like, I didn't need that kind of life, but I was once when I helped open a high school, and I was like, oh, that's great. That's way better than Crisman arrested.
That was his son who helped open a high school.
Yeah, his son. Every Crisman is an educator. It's pretty interesting to me. His son actually, I was talking to him, and it was a little about his dad, but I wanted it to be more about him. And I can tell you a lot about the guy because I think he's a really stand-up kind of person. He was telling me that he was a vice principal, and all the kids in high school that he had to suspend are kids. He's like, I need to keep them in school. So he was throwing out, just kids that were like the ripe fruit of information. They need to they need to bring themselves into the world and help out, and they have all this potential. So what he did is, I guess they got the school right next to him. It was empty, and they turned it into an alternative high school. And I thought that was wonderful. There's like 5 or 6 different places they could bring the kids into, like technical high school type stuff and internships. And
so there was just a place to fit all the kind of not oddballs, but people that didn't quite fit in regular school system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being an oddball. We're lucky that we live in this era where they're catering to alternative needs, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, yeah, I just thought that was I want to say some good about the guy because he was very gracious in talking to me.
Yeah, that's really cool of him.
Yeah, anything you want to talk about, man, I'm open now.
Well, so I mean that's a really cool project, and yeah, I can't wait to see that. Legitimately, man, I can't wait to see that. The Fred Crisman comic book series. I saw you have like 2 or 3 issues I saw posted. Or I saw
you might have seen the covers. Yeah, those are a couple years old.
Oh, okay. I was searching for the comics to buy them. I couldn't find them.
Oh, I'd love for you to buy them. I'm doing them right now as I'll send you a couple of them. I'm doing a Hanford site story right now where he gets into a fist fight with Albert Einstein. And Einstein, Crisman, he's like grabbing a rock and then a gun, and then he, the hand goes over, and then he grabs Fat Man, just picks Fat Man up, and he starts sword fighting with the shirtless, ripped Albert Einstein, and he hits him in the head and goes, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds." Like you always awesome, say, man. Right?
I gotta read that, man.
It gets goofy. We've written 8 scripts so far. My friends and I. The other friend I want to name drop, Elliot Morgan. He's been helping me do kind of a 10-issue arc, and it covers the Shaver mystery, and it covers Crisman's relationship with his kids, and it covers just what kind of a life you would have if you did fight space aliens, and if you told your family the truth, and just the fallout from that. Yeah, there's a lot of, I could talk about that all day, but I will. So try to stop me.
I also saw you had, I forget the dude's name, but it was a story I'd never heard before. You did a comic, and this was more than a cover because I saw the actual frames. A guy that like in the 80s, 70s and 80s, Hollywood, like took over Seattle. He was like a bank robber and a meth dealer or something.
His name was like Scott Spurlock. We submitted that. Elliot and I submitted that as like a test. That was the first comic we were going to do. I think we called it Hollywood, the Man Who Sees Seattle. And they were real guys. And they started off, they called him Hollywood because he would wear different masks. He sort of had this he was the Hollywood Bandit. And ultimately, as the story went, they started cooking and selling meth until one of the gang members died. They built a treehouse in Olympia, and they bragged in 3 days they built it completely fueled on drugs.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's probably how long it took Crisman to write the book, honestly. It's kind of a similar claim. They built it overnight, basically. And there was a death in the group, and they stopped putting drugs out. They just decided, fuck it, let's go rob some banks. And that's where it turns into such a crazy story. No publisher is interested in it at the time. It was the first thing we ever put out, but I got a really nice letter that was like, this is completely not cool to put out with a publisher attached because it's so crazy. But the art and the story are really good. So come back with something else that's a little more.
The art that I saw for it, I thought was fantastic, but sorry, go ahead.
I really appreciate that. No. It's just kind of it was like a lamppost in the distance of we could make biographical stuff,
Right.
And I was either going to do Crisman or DB Cooper. And
oh man, that's cool.
I aimed at Robert Englund to play DB Cooper. And I got a very nice no, but I actually got a no from Robert Englund that was like, no, but keep trying.
Really?
Yeah. And then that's cool. I wrote, and I was just letting fate go. I was like, do you either this or the Crisman one? And I wrote to Pat Cashman, I want to do this cartoon. Here's some art. And he goes, I love cartoons. I'll do it. And I was like, okay, whatever you want, Pat. if you know what Pat's from, he did Almost Live in Seattle, and then now he does National Geographic dubbing, like voiceover, and he did. If you ever play Smash Bros, I think Brawl specifically, he's the one that goes Mario.
Oh, really? You've got him on the project?
I got him. He's the sweetest guy in the whole wide world. He has a wonderful show
for the film that's coming up.
He's going to play Crisman, and if you've ever heard him talk, he sounds a lot like Robert Stack. So when he talks, you can't tell if he's lying. Like, everything sounds just like this. And so, I'll see if I can get you a voice clip.
Well, I'm more than happy to give you. That's perfect for Crisman, man, because that's how it's so him. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I got from his family. I got the only audio clip I can find of Crisman, and he sounds just like Art Bell. Just picture Art Bell.
Really?
Yeah, that's exactly what he sounds like. I was amazed,
dude. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever you want to talk about.
Oh no! So, you know, a little bit of random history that you might be interested in. I was just reading the Alice in Chains book that just came out, and there was a place called the Music Bank, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll make the story short, but I thought you might find it intriguing. Thinking of the Scott Skurlock guy. Now, what happened wasn't on that level, but so what it turned out was this big warehouse that they had rented out, and they had converted some of it into a recording space. So like Alice in Chains and a lot of the local bands that were just coming up, they were recording and rehearsing there. Just rehearsing. I don't know if they were recording. But on the other side of this warehouse, right, what they didn't know was that there was one of the biggest marijuana growing businesses in this history of the state of Washington. And it's a wild story because it was spearheaded by two immigrants. They're from like the Nordic countries. I think maybe Norway. I'm not really sure. But these guys, like, I don't know how they managed to do this, but they basically, it just sounded like they were career con men. And they came in and they built this the operation ended up being busted. And they approximated that they had the value of $300 million worth of weed, which was in like, this was in like 91 to 93. So 300 million was even more back then. They busted them. And the one dude, the Norwegian guy, whatever, it was one of the Nordic countries. He went on the run and he escaped the country. And I'm pretty sure he got away with it. And then there was like another dude who got caught. But yeah, that was a piece of local history that I had never heard before that I thought was just really fascinating.
There's so much weird in Seattle. We went to, I was going to write a Heaven's Gate comic at one point, which I think I still might. I actually wrote a whole script. I've listened to interviews with every family member that was documented. I don't know how into Heaven's Gate you are, but I love, I love the tragedy of, people who give themselves up to what they see as a better cause, like something bigger than themselves, and just the fallout that leaves, the big void of just these people. You know, you're missing out, but are they happy? You know, were they happy? I'm gonna stop myself before I say something insensitive or nuts. But
no, I know what
obsessed.
You mean. That's a really hard one to talk about without insulting the people, and I agree. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, and that's why I've never.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, it's hard to make a comic out of something. You saw I did one about Count Dankula when he was going to court for the pug. We made the pug do the hand signal, and I'm not commenting past that. That was a cute dog. I met him.
Did you really?
Well, I Skyped him. I was like, "Hi, Buddha, how you doing?" And he just kind of stuck his tongue out. He didn't answer for his crimes. But what I'm getting at is comic books are seen as a form of low art. And I did one on Chris Chan. You're probably familiar a little bit, but and Doug Walker. But their comics are seen as such a form of low art that the effort you put into the drawing aspect, it doesn't work out when it's a controversial figure. So if you do a Heaven's Gate, even if you called it a graphic novel, I mean, their family members, I'm sure, would be very upset by that. But anyway, the point I was getting at is we found the tile. There's a tile they donated in Pike Place. If you go up, it's kind of in the middle where the kitchen area is, but they donated to have the Pike Place Market renovated. So they have a tile there, and there's a photo of my feet and my girlfriend's feet and my puppy's feet in front of the tile. And I showed it to my friend, and he wrote, "I like that the dog's in on the joke."
The tile like says Heaven's, like it says
yep.
It says Heaven's Gate on it?
It says Heaven's Gate on it.
No way.
And there's no explanation why. They just donated some money over there at the time. I mean, they're very nomadic.
Yeah. There's actually, I watched their outro videos, whatever you want to call them, the testimonies that they did the day before they killed themselves, and that's obviously very disturbing. But the one that was most disturbing to me was the one gentleman, and he was the one guy out of all of them that I felt like had some doubts. Like I felt like part of him was like, I don't know about this. But he would
describe him.
He was stuck in it by that point. He was
in for a penny.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he was he had like brown hair, short brown hair. No, because they were all bald at that point, weren't they?
Yeah, he had short brown hair. He might have been the one that got the surgery. He might have been one of those because he developed a very particular, what do you want to call it, an androgynous laugh, if that makes sense. They started noticing something was different about him.
Huh.
And I've talked to the group, and I think there's like 2 of them left. They're very polite and cordial. It's not like they're recruiting people or anything. It's not.
Oh, they're still active members, though?
I've considered buying a copy of their book. You can still do that. That website's still fully functional. People like to harass him. There's not much you can do to harass him. I wouldn't worry about that.
Right.
That's just not a good way to go about your life. But they are very cordial and will answer questions and for whatever that's worth.
Right. Well, I mean, they didn't harm any. I mean, they technically only harmed themselves. I mean, it's
a very weird gray area, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I totally know what you mean. Like talking when you know you're being recorded, it's hard to discuss it because you don't want to come across as you don't want to insult anybody or anything. I certainly don't want to do that because they all seem like they had their hearts in the right place. Like I can actually understand how somebody can look at the injustice and evil of the world and be like, I'm willing to put myself on the front line and give it all up to be part of this,
Totally.
It's just like, unfortunately, there's some aspect, some dynamic in those kind of groups that like almost inevitably leads. Although some people have said Marshall Applewhite was intentionally doing what he did. In other cases, maybe
but
weird spiral.
I just, I read a lot about cults, and he wasn't quite a Jim Jones where it was about him. A lot of cult people that I see, I'm talking out of my ass right now. There was one who, he would invite younger women in to his bedroom, and because most cults are about depriving you of food. He had like a big bowl of chocolate bars, and if you perform certain stunts for him, you got chocolate bars. Things like that. Marshall Applewhite was never, why am I harassing people? Why are these people? He really was against his sexual nature, which doesn't make it okay. But he obviously, his problem was always, why can't I maintain a positive relationship with people in my life? So it's weird. It's just a very particular brand of strange.
Right. Well, that's like, did you ever see the Source family cult? It was actually a well done movie on Netflix. Usually they butcher these kind of stories, but they actually did this one well. Where I think they were called the Source family, and they ran like one of the first vegan restaurants in the country out of Los Angeles. This was in the 60s.
Yeah.
And their leader was everything about the guy screamed con man. But you know what? He turned out to, I'm pretty sure he was sincere. I mean, he actually got to a point, the way he ended was so crazy. He got to a point by that time they lived in Hawaii, and he said, I'm not Jesus, I'm nobody, I'm just another person. And said, like, I have nothing to give you people. And then the dude gets in a hang glider, launches himself off of one of those Kauai mountains.
Yeah, yeah.
And dude crashes to earth. I shouldn't be laughing about this because he died.
That's not cool.
I'm laughing at the insanity. I'm not laughing at what happened to the man. I'm laughing at the ludicrous nature of the story.
But I love the image in my head of him flying into the sun like Icarus, and that's it.
Dude, even crazier is that the dude lands and he broke every bone in his body, but he was still alive. Like he lived for another 24 hours, and he was still talking to them as he's like there with every bone broken in his body. But like if you read that story, it seems like he was sincere. He wasn't trying to hurt anybody. And like a lot of as far as I know, actually all of the members of the cult, they went their separate ways, but they still have fond memories of it. You know, like they still think of it well as a positive experience.
That's what makes cults so interesting to me is you know, when I was a kid, let's say like, you know, early teens, serial killers. And a lot of people stop at serial killers and go, wow, that's crazy. How crazy is it? But they never quite go past that. It's the people who they're causing what I definitely consider as harm, but they're doing it out of some sort of like bigger purpose. You know, it's like, why did you build those giant castles in the 1300s? And the answer is because you're part of something bigger than yourself that you won't even see by the time you pass away.
Right.
It's all very interesting to me.
And I think there is something in all people, especially certain people. I actually have it in myself. You want to do something meaningful, and when you don't want your life to just pass away and be like, all I did was accrue a bunch of junk, eat a bunch of food, and then I died, and then I was gone. Like, you want to do something meaningful. So I can see the pull. You know,
let me show you. This is my movie collection. I have 2,000 movies.
Holy cow, dude.
Yeah. No, and that's when I realized that ate up way more of my personality than Brian the artist. I was like, fuck it, I'll just make a movie. I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to die, and what I've left behind is a big box just full of Blu-rays.
Right. So do you consider that now your primary medium, or your primary goal is film?
I would love to be a director. I'm not a terrific animator. I feel like I'm a better storyteller. I just happen to be good at making my own stories happen. I don't know if this makes sense to you, but I kind of consider writing cheap in the manner that a lot of people think they can do it. And I think a lot of what makes writing valuable is when someone else draws it or someone else directs it, because you're throwing more credibility. It's like getting a celebrity in your movie. You're getting more credibility thrown at you. So when I was doing comics earlier, you know, it's one thing to write a script. It's another thing to have it accompanied by some medium that shows that someone in the world is serious about what you're talking about, and they're willing to throw their time at it.
Right.
And I think if I just put out a Crisman book, I'm in the Ken Thomas and Adam Gorightly area where I know what I'm talking about, but I can't spin it into something more than just a neat story.
Right. No, I think
I said that right.
Yeah, I think that's a totally accurate observation, especially now. And I fully support indie artists, and I publish some of my own stuff, self-publishing. I'm all for it. But the fact is that it has kind of, in a way, it has saturated the market a little bit. So like if you put out a book, like you just said, it's kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people have done that, you know, as opposed to getting that extra buy-in from other people. Like, yeah, I think that's a brilliant observation, honestly.
I talked to Crisman Jr. about this. There may be a Crisman documentary in the works. We don't know. Not that I have anything to do with it as of yet, but have you ever seen the movie Room 237?
With Jim Carrey?
No, it's a documentary about, they interviewed like 3 conspiracy theorists.
Yeah,
about The Shining, and it starts off as like, this movie's about this movie's about that, and then you realize this movie's really about these 3 crazy people. I say crazy, these people with really intense beliefs, and how they projected onto the movie. And I think if we could get Ken Thomas and Adam Gorightly and a couple of people like that, just these people, probably Crisman connoisseurs, if you got them all together and then we interviewed his family for whatever they want to talk about, you could create a really interesting composite of his life.
Dude, that's legit. That would have brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, with more questions than answers, but that's actually way cheaper than doing an animation. I should have started with that. But his son's open to it. So if this doesn't work out, that's something I certainly want to pursue in the next couple of years.
Dude, I think that's brilliant. I would love to watch that. You know, the I mentioned this briefly in one of our exchanges. The Michael, I can never say the dude's name right. Like Riconsuto. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure you've came across the parts where he said that Crisman taught him some of the basics of what seems to me to be essentially like a kind of like how to perform psyops, kind of like or maybe not
like
psyops.
wiretaps.
Yeah, like how to manipulate and do little intelligence tricks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about Crisman. Like every time I'm ready to write him off as kind of just a guy who needed attention and stuff, something like that comes up. It's like I can't be convinced yet. Like I am not convinced that he wasn't plugged into some kind of like freelance intelligence group that was doing some kind of weird stuff, you know?
Well, and I hate to say it, but the first time I really dug in, like I found something that I was like, this is more than just what other people are finding. I found this you've probably Googled him as much as I have. There's a deep politics forum about him. And this one guy starts talking. I can't get him by name, but he says, Crisman is one of the biggest liars who ever lived. And he will say anything to get attention and this and that. And I looked the dude's website up. He has an interview with Crisman's son. And that's kind of how I started on this like deeper research. And one of my favorite things, I can actually read you some of these documents because they're hilarious. If you give me a second, I'll pull it up because I think it's very valuable. And then you'll have to edit my fucking keyboard out. The beauty of the Yeti, it doesn't have a stand. Hilarious. It may even be on my document because it.
And the other thing about Crisman that I think complicates his story is like you can pinpoint him at all kinds of places. Like he wasn't making it all up, which then leads to the question of like out of purely logistical concerns, how the hell was he getting around all over the place? Like especially then traveling long distances in the country wasn't that easy. So it was like
on an educator's salary.
Yeah, like how does he keep popping up everywhere? That's why like I'm not ready to write the dude off yet. There's still too many weird things about his life. And that historian told me, so bizarre. The historian told me, I can't remember his name, but he doesn't believe any of the conspiratorial aspects of Crisman, but he said that work that he did in Murder of a City, he said that it did indeed contribute to the changing the election. So, I mean, Crisman was effective in that radio campaign that he launched. He successfully overturned the existing political system of the city.
Yeah, so, he really did care. It's crazy. It's crazy how far he went for some of that. Why can't I find this? You're gonna love it. Have you read the interview? The court transcript from
from like JFK?
It's so boring.
Yeah,
he did such a good job not. He'd walk around with the subpoena. Hey, everybody, I have a subpoena, and then he'd show up and I don't know what you're talking about, Your Honor. No.
Yeah, man. I that's actually how we found out about the Servants of Awareness. So that he's asked about them in there, and that's what launched me on that whole little rabbit hole.
Boy, yeah. No, I think you might have been the first guy I looked up or who I found when I was looking into Crisman too.
Yeah.
If that leads any weight to your name, I really do appreciate you putting out. It was on a small Tacoma bookshelf, right? Is that the one you put it out?
Yeah, no, I put it on my travel blog. I have a Pacific Northwest travel blog, and I put it on there.
I tried to get a hold of you, and you were a little hard to get a hold of, I got to say. Do you mostly get your money off doing travel blogs?
No, I mainly get it off of freelance editing and writing of various kinds, and I also edit water science as a day job.
That's really cool. I unloaded trucks.
I am a full-time editor. I edit and write for a living. That's what I do. But yeah,
way to be.
I am grateful for it. But yeah, man, that's actually really cool that I was one of the first people to pop up. I'm actually going to do a video series on Murder of a City because like I really respect that you wanted to get that transcribed into digital form to make sure that the book doesn't just die. I think I actually thought of doing the same thing. So I think that's really cool you did that because that is like I said, a mainstream historian that I talked to said he thinks Crisman's a crazy dude, but he said that worked. I mean, he actually successfully overturned the political system. So just a piece of history that shouldn't be lost.
Crisman really cared. He, I don't know if you've heard the story. It's going to be so much fun to edit. I don't know if you've heard the story about when I found it. All right, cool. There's a story of him when he had I believe it was kidney failure, like I think a couple months before he passed away, but he basically thought he was having a heart attack or something. He was reading a UFO book. This is right when that took off. And he he was reading about abductions, and he woke up in the hospital after they had already worked on him, and he's in a dark room, and it's very sterile, and there's all this new unidentified equipment. And he said something along the lines of, "What kind of a spaceship is this?" So there's so much that makes me think he's not lying.
Right.
There's also a story. I have this document. He pulled a gun on a cop after getting pulled over for reckless driving, and it says, what he has to do. It says $100 fine. Try pulling a gun on a cop ever.
Yeah,
$100 fine. What does that mean? Did he work for the OSS? Who did he talk to?
Totally. Now, do you know who Peter Levenda is?
No, tell me.
Oh, Peter Levenda he's a great weirdness author. I think he's one of the best in the business. And he's like a high profile dude. Like he's associated with John Podesta, the Clintons. And I mean, he was associated also with that To the Stars Academy, that UFO Academy that is headed by he's like a member of Blink 82 or something like Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge. Yeah, that's how he talks. So he's associated with that as well, right? So Podesta, he's like a prominent human being.
Oh yeah,
and his stories are normally extremely well referenced, as he did a Sinister Forces series where he just has footnotes galore. I mean, he's a true scholar, a true academic.
Yeah,
but in his book, he also claimed. No, he didn't claim. He suggested that Crisman was an OSS agent, and he didn't give any references to it. But Peter Levenda is not the type of dude to throw stuff out there. If he said that, he has reason to think that, and he makes that assertion in his books. So. I mean, there's more to it. People want to write Crisman off so easily, but I don't think you can do it that easily.
He's so good at sprinkling stuff. The first person, I was going to say the first person Tom DeLonge called. The first person Thomas Beckham called when he was arrested was Crisman. And that's in the JFK. Who did the JFK movie? Who did that? I love him.
Oh, Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone, yeah. I'm halfway through it. And every time I try to watch it, I get too many questions and I start Googling stuff. He really did call Crisman.
I was watching, sorry to know, I think there's a slight time lag. I'm not trying to talk over you. It's just kind of happening.
No, totally.
Okay. I was reading some weird thing. I know I'm always reading weird stuff. And somebody quoted Aleister Crowley. I'm sure you at least know vaguely who Crowley was.
Vaguely.
Yeah. And he's known now for being like, he gave a rebirth to the occult. But he also had like intelligence ties. That's proven. And he had a quote where he said, always tell the truth, but live your life in such a wild manner that nobody would believe it if you told them. And I sometimes wonder if that's what Crisman was doing. Like assume that you're a person who's living a double life, right? And you can't keep the double life totally secret forever. Another way to approach it would be to do so much crazy shit and to go all over the place so much that if anybody tried to track you down, it would be almost impossible. Just like leave red herrings all through history. Yeah. So
that's great. So, Crisman Jr. told me that it's so hard. Crisman told me about Crisman. Crisman said he wanted his inscription on his grave to say, "Never a dull moment."
That's what his dad wanted?
Well, that's what Crisman Sr. wanted. I don't know if that made it, but look, I don't know a lot of people less dull than Crisman, at least from a history perspective.
Absolutely.
I'd love to. I went to 5 different libraries to find that book, by the way. And I started texting Crisman Jr. I almost convinced him to scan it with his phone, which is an immense inconvenience considering how nice he's been. And I was like, I will pay you to do it. Just, we got to get the book. And took me a very long time to get a hold of the book. I called the Tacoma Library and they had a copy in their special archives. And I was like, I just want to look at it for an hour. I'm going to hold my phone up to it and archive it for my own use. I have an app called VoiceStream that'll play it while I do other work, and it's very useful because it'll just transcribe the PDF for you.
Oh, wow.
It's very useful. I've been listening to it off and on doing my day job, and it's so boring and pointless. His book is so fascinatingly different than his historical relevance. But I went to 5 different libraries, and finally I find it, and I call them on the phone. I'm like, okay, I just want to look at it. And they're like, well, because of COVID, that area of the library is not open. That's what I heard from everyone. And every library said, we can't let you on that floor. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I'm like, this is a conspiracy. This is crazy.
Yeah, dude, totally.
It's getting weird. Deros are interfering with my life. So finally, the Tacoma Library, I'm going, do you have the book? And they're like, yeah, because of COVID, we can't let you go up to that room. So we're just going to let you check it out. I don't even have a library. Like, I have an e-card. I don't have the full card. Like, if I just took it, I'm gone.
Right.
So I took it and I started just scanning it in my car and I just put it back in the drop box because I was afraid if I bring that with me, it's going to disappear. My car is going to catch on fire. Who knows? So I just made a copy obsessively. I hope we can put it out again. There's some stuff in there that I definitely would not want my name attached to now.
Yeah.
He uses some less than progressive terms.
No, right.
Okay, so here's the statement. This can't be real. Statement made by Mr. Stanley Peerboom. He's I, Stanley Peerboom, do voluntarily make the following statement and declare that it is true to the best of my recollection. In 1963, I was a school teacher at Rainier High School in Rainier, Oregon, and ultimately became principal. At this time, Mr. Fredley Crisman was also a teacher at this school. Mr. Crisman was teaching school on the 22nd of November, 1963, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. When I assumed the duties of principal, I had occasion to observe the actions of Mr. Crisman and found him to be a disruptive influence at the school. I also caught him in a number of falsehoods and found him to be an unsuitable individual to be teaching children. So here it is. In early 64, Crisman began to miss an unusual amount of time. He claimed to be applying for and interviewing for the role of school superintendent at John Day, Oregon. I later learned this was not the truth. Mr. Crisman claimed to be in the Air Force Reserve and on occasion wore his uniform to the school while he was teaching. This was not done on November 22nd, 1963. And that's just such a weird. Can't you picture it? Crisman going to school with the uniform on. He had to include that. It like the implication seems to be, okay, I know Crisman and I hate him. That's what I read off it. He didn't kill Kennedy, but he there's something wrong with the dude.
But he's still an asshole.
He's still kind of an asshole. Yeah.
Man, that is funny. Yeah, that dude, sometimes I see the picture of him, like when I visualize him, sometimes I think, okay, this dude, you're in World War II, you see some horrible stuff. And say you come out and you're just like, you know what, man, I only got one life and I'm just going to do some crazy shit. I'm just going to go out and have fun.
I like that picture of him too, because it looks like he's doing Blue Steel from Zoolander. It's so strange. So also I might be getting too far into this. I have some notes from talking to his son that I'm more than happy to give out to you. One that's kind of personal, but I think it's okay to give out because it's documented. He talks about he was in World War II. I think he got shot down twice at the time. And he said that the further up he rose in the ranks, that was another body behind him that was someone he knew that had passed away. And he gets out. He goes to Korea. Now he's in Korea. He's like, I survived my 20s. In your 20s, you feel invincible. I still feel invincible. Right. Like, but there's that point where you're like, okay, I made it out of fucking World War II. I made it out. Not everyone did. We all know survival bias. The Black Plague never got to me, so therefore it couldn't have been that big a deal. But once you're in that, I can't even imagine. And he knew that the odds were stacking against him more and more because he's like, I got out of the first one. We're not doing a sequel. And he started having anxiety attacks and he had trouble sleeping. So they sent him to the medic and the medic said, this is called phenobarbital. This will help you take a little nap. That's what the Heaven's Gate people use to disappear forever. Wow.
So that just knocks you clean out.
That makes you go away for a while. You can't even drink on it. I mean, you just lose days. You can only get it now to like put your dog down. Like, it's so crazy. Back then, you're like, I'd like some mercury, please. And a little bit of heroin on the side. And you write it on a prescription pad. But he ended up missing the mission from what I understand. And then it was followed up with him. It was followed up with him going back to the medic, and I slept through all that. Like, it just put me out. And he's like, these are called uppers. Take some of these and you'll be fine. And I don't know how common knowledge it is. We used it as propaganda against the Nazis, that they used amphetamines and uppers. But everyone in that era, they were just giving it out. There's probably a big scoop of them. I mean, so it's not unusual for the time, but I think it definitely left a mark on Crisman the man. I have family that went through something similar. World War II just messed people up. The divorce rate soared because everyone thought the world was ending.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I even find myself, you think of the Vietnam War, and it's very easy. It's like, yeah, dude, the guys that came out of that were all messed up on, drugs. But for some reason, we don't think of World War II like that, But if you actually look at the history, like that happened to a lot of people then too. I think it was just like culturally, it was different because even then, if you were a wreck, you still put on your 3-piece suit and you still made sure your hair was like, I really think that was part of it. People were so good at keeping up appearances because that was the general culture. That like we look at it now and we're like, I can't imagine that dude with a crew cut and a nice suit, like being a meth head, like.
Yep. And the big secret. Happen. Yep. The big secret to life is fake it till you make it.
Right.
If you ever heard that story of Steven Spielberg, I think he worked on the lot once, the Paramount lot, and then he would just keep going. He met the security guard and became his friend and would just walk in every day. Yeah, I work here.
I have heard.
Not that Spielberg ever did anything important, but
yeah, who?
I mean, yeah.
Even who?
If you got more time, I got plenty of time to talk. Anything you want to mention specifically about Crisman, I can go through notes, but I got to use the restroom real quick.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you in just a second.
All right. So the big question I would ask is, after all this time, maybe two interrelated questions. Spent a lot of time looking into Crisman. Number one, and obviously you don't have a definitive answer any more than anyone else does, and you don't claim to, but of all the possible explanations about Crisman, which one do you lean towards? And number two, how does that inform how you interpret the Maury Island incident?
I'm leaning more towards he was full of it. I'm more interested in him as a character. The Maury Island incident is very likely a truthful thing, but it's layered over so much not believing that, it's layered, contextualized in this world where he fought space aliens. So you gotta really consider it. He wasn't necessarily there for it. I know that he showed up later, and in all the accounts it says he didn't believe Harold Dahl when he said this, which, that spells lie to me,
Right.
But that story is so lost to time, and it has so many things. I'm sure you've heard they're harbor patrolmen, in the way that they were at a harbor and they were patrolling around. They weren't there in an official capacity. Crisman's job, or Dahl's job, was to collect logs that fell off barges and then sell them back to the timber companies that brands on them. And that's just kind of the life they were living at that time. It was I don't imagine he was in a very high place in life. If you've ever read the Kenneth Arnold book, Coming of the Saucers, it is amazing that that is his autobiography by all accounts, and it's all about Crisman. It's all about that Maury Island incident. But I would lean a lot more towards they were dumping something toxic, which is a story that he later brings up. But after saying UFO, it gets very sketchy.
That's interesting you say that, because my buddy, the one who I mentioned, who's like real serious about Crisman, his primary running theory is that Crisman was like a corporate spy, kind of, or not quite a spy, but like a corporate intelligence, whatever, and that he was used by Boeing.
Yeah.
No, Boeing, this is just somebody's theory about a historical event, Boeing, not accusing anything. He thinks that something happened with Boeing that introduced something they didn't want getting out into the public, like pollution, chemicals, something like that. And that his job was to go in and confuse the situation and throw everybody off track. And I thought that was an interesting theory. And I wish I had prepared for this better, because he has a reason for thinking that. He has some kind of documentation that ties Crisman to Boeing.
I know his son said that he worked there and he said, my dad would go there right before the sun came up and he would get back just as the sun went down. And I have no idea what he did, but he always told me there were no windows. Don't know what that means, but why not?
That adds a little credibility to that notion.
Yeah. And what's weird, I think I've heard involvement in the Manhattan Project, but he never went to the Hanford reactor, of all things. He went to a different site. I don't have a lot on that. There's so many weird little things. I watched Crisman Jr. play. He actually apparently beat Half-Life Alyx, which I'm not a huge Half-Life guy, but I saw a video of him looking at the G-Man character. I don't know how familiar you are, but he's sort of from that lore of the man in the suit who's secretly running the narrative, and he comes from that long line of Men in Black type characters. And I asked him, "Did you look at that and go, that's so crazy? This character probably wouldn't exist if it weren't for my dad saying stuff." And he's like, "No, but you're totally right." And then he mentioned, I'm sure you've heard this, it's probably fact. It's as close to truth as possible coming out of my mouth about it, but the Marlboro Man in X-Files was probably based on him, the dude who is kind of everywhere and he's smoking in the background. Completely possible. They talk about it in the Twin Peaks books as well, that he's some sort of weird nexus point.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah, I actually bought those books and I skimmed them, but I haven't had a chance because they're big freaking books. Yeah, beautiful books. I love them, but I haven't had a chance to actually read them cover to cover. So that's the assertion in that series that Crisman is like a very important character. There's something about him that the world revolves around him, which. In a completely different sense, his whole life seemed like the world revolved around him. Also, Crisman Jr. was telling me that he said everyone always told me that the Marlboro Man was based on my dad, which I know isn't true because he only smoked cools. Man, that's wild. That's really cool. God, man, Crisman, it's the really funny thing is when I discovered Crisman, I was like, I'm the first one to discover this. Like when I found Murder of a City, like I thought I was the first one. Like now I was like, dude, I found something new. And I start digging and then like people start calling or emailing me and contacting me. I'm like, dude, there's all sorts of pieces. Like once you fall into that Crisman rabbit hole, man, you can't get out, dude.
I love it. I love that it's this whole universe. It's like painting abstract, like you're working in negative space. We're working on all the things he didn't do, and you get all these people coming in. It makes me happy. The more people I've reached out to, the more little tidbits. And I'm glad I reached out to you because I wouldn't have even thought to do it if I wasn't thinking about the book. Mm-hmm. But just the connections. I want to hear more from your guy. He hasn't emailed me yet, but I'd love to. Just anything. I do have. This is the weirdest and most conspiratorial I will get, and I do not want to say. I want to say specifically, I don't believe this, or I don't necessarily believe it, but I have some documentation. So vaguely, I'm sure people listening know a little bit about the octopus.
Yeah, I do for sure. The octopus. For people who don't know, he's referring to the research of. Shoot, what was the guy's name?
Oh, man.
I'll look it up real quick.
All right. Then you don't have to edit my keyboard clicks. Who was the name of that reporter?
Danny Casolaro.
Danny Casolaro, yes.
So for people who aren't familiar, that is a whole other series of shows on its own. Crazy situation involving promised software and possible backdoors that were built into the software. A journalist named Danny Casolaro, who was trying to figure stuff out about this, wound up dead in very strange circumstances. And one of the people in that was named Michael Riconsueto. And
is that what it is?
No, I don't know. I have no idea. I've tried to figure out how to say that dude's name and I can't. And he was connected to Tacoma, which then connects him to Crisman. He says that Crisman was kind of a mentor of his. So, all right, please go ahead.
Oh, also, Crisman is friends with Marshall Riconosciuto and therefore his son Michael. And they said that Crisman had a phone in his car. We don't know why,
What?
Who the hell had a phone in their car in the 60s?
Yeah, that's like
so strange.
That was cutting edge technology that, as far as I know, was only owned by like extremely wealthy people.
Yeah. I wonder what was on the other end.
Huh.
Maybe it was Batman. I don't fucking know. That's so crazy. Dude.
That's what I mean. Like I lean, as you said, I lean towards Crisman was a very colorful character who likes to just make up stuff. But I am by no means ready to write off the possibility that he had something else going on, because stuff like that just always pops up in his story where it's like, man, that doesn't make sense if he was just some school teacher who was playing pranks on people. It just doesn't add up.
Boy, he must have been fun and exhausting to be around at the same time. Jeez. So that whole Reconnosciuto thing, the Promise software was ultimately, according to lore, sold to the Russians. And then I found this news article, and this is the news article talking, not me. They mentioned that the September 11th attacks were caused partially due to the leaking of the Promise software, which had then been sold to Al Qaeda. That's what the news article says. And I actually have I made a backup of it because every time I listen to something on Crisman, it always just gets deleted. I don't know why, so I just back everything up. But they talk about how there is a connection to the Promise software. So I'm not saying Crisman was in the plane, but I'm saying it's one of those 6 degrees of separation from Crisman to 9/11 now.
Right.
Just so nuts.
And again, an example of how the guy it's not just stories that he told. There is little scraps of evidence that seem to tie him to all kinds of shit, all kinds of stuff.
I absolutely just love him as a character. And my stories have him, like you were saying about, is it the performer Crisman, or is this just a real guy that this happened, and the performance is that he's hiding most of it? I've heard tell from people at Tacoma bookstores that I can't name because I don't know them. They're probably lying too, but they said that Crisman was the kind of dude who would hang out in CD bars and just talk about politics, and he'd talk about secret black ops he ran, and I can't quite tell you this, but buy me a drink, I'll tell you more.
Really?
And that's the rumor. I don't know how true that is, but we liked the idea, my writer buddies and me, we liked the idea that if we told a story about him, it would be filtered by 50 years of lies. When you tell a story and the fish gets bigger and bigger when you catch it, I'm very guilty of all this hyperbole. In particular, I like the idea that in my version, not only did he fight space aliens, the space aliens were in fact Nazis, and they talk kind of like a Dalek mixed with Palpatine. I play one of them. We are the Deros. Like, that's why not? And they're like ripping people up. This one is full of organs. I just love that. Why not? It's kind of like Evil Dead meets X-Files, frankly.
Right.
And so by the time we get to the next story, we're like, okay, now he's got to meet Bigfoot. And I'm taking some of these. What's fun about it is there's stories that popular culture just doesn't track. I don't know why we're so fixated on Skinwalker Ranch and like the Wendigo. They're kind of like refillables. They don't have a lot to them. You can kind of just insert what you want. But I showed you that Ape Canyon video. I watched that a couple of years back, and it's so spooky and chilling. Can't you picture a whole movie taking place I think there is one now, but in a cabin, and there's arms reaching in, and they're trying to hack at the arms.
Yeah.
You're just being chased by these unknown monsters. And this is before Bigfoot sightings. Right. Now, the actual story, I think, has an LSD trip in it. There's something strange. There's more than just apes in the actual account that the real witnesses gave out. But
that's wild.
What a story. Put Crisman in that. The Manhattan Project, what was going on? Put Crisman in that.
Totally.
And the Manhattan Project one, also, I'm really all about this right now. I have this whole bit where like Crisman's friends are trying on an asbestos suit, and they have an X-ray gun. He's trying to find his Deros ray gun, but he finds an X-ray gun, and they're testing it out, and Crisman shoots it in his face, and you see that he's a skull. You see a real skull, and he tilts his head back and goes, wait till the kids see this on Halloween. I mean, just what a world of possibilities you can do with this guy.
Dude, I totally agree. Honestly, I think it's brilliant, man, and I really hope you guys continue to develop it. I would absolutely buy it, dude. It's friggin' brilliant, man. And he is. I mean,
think we could get a show. We could. Adult Swim may be interested. I don't know yet, but
oh, totally, dude.
The screening was the day we finished the animation. All that's left is some sound tweakage. I would very much. Pat actually recorded something as Crisman. Pat Cashman recorded something as Crisman, pitching the show, and we're going to put that out along with the animation because I think there's a place for that on TV.
Dude,
just trying to get it out there. Yeah,
that'd be really cool. And he's like, the possibilities are endless. You could run that character forever, man.
Yeah,
you know? And selling it as, dude, this is only my opinion, but selling it as the Forrest Gump. How did you say it?
The Forrest Gump of conspiracy theories.
Dude, that's a great tag. That really is a great tagline. That instantly is like, even if somebody knows nothing about Crisman, that's like a hook right there. You know, I think that's brilliant, dude.
I love it. I had that one. We've been using that in pitches, but my favorite one is Scott and Steve came up with is, even when you see it, you won't believe it. Oh man, I love it.
Yeah, dude, that's good too, and that defines Crisman. I mean, it's like, you know,
yeah.
Even when you see pictures and you know he's a real guy, you still can't quite believe it.
I'm gonna give you some Cashman Crisman dialogue because I think you should hear it.
Right.
And you can play it on the show if you want, but I definitely want you to have that. I'll give you some screenshots, but I really want to we're putting a single out. I don't know if I told you that. I commissioned a song called "He Puts the Man in Crisman." I'm pretty impressed with it. I didn't write it, but it's a really funny song.
It's an actual song?
It's an actual song.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
I want you should play it. It's so funny.
What are you going to do with it? Do you have any precise plan?
It right now it's the credits for the show.
Oh, okay.
We're laughing really hard. I love toxic. How do I put this? I don't want to get into too many cultural labels, but I love big masculine dudes that say things that are borderline. Like, I don't think he meant to say it that way, but there's a line in here where he goes, "There's no I in team, but there is always a man in Crisman." And it got so many laughs. I'm like, let's make that a song.
Dude, that's really cool.
Yeah, the Crisman family heard it and they thought it was hilarious. And he's like, "Can I have that on my iPod? I want to play it for my girlfriend when she comes home." I thought that was hilarious.
That's awesome. The song is complete?
The song's complete. Do you want me to send it to you?
Yeah, I would love to hear it, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Hang on. I'm just gonna send it to you now because I want your reaction. Yeah, and if you want any of these documents, I'm more than happy to provide them. I've got a nice crunched down PDF too. That's kind of a basis for entering the world of Crisman lore. All right. It's already halfway uploaded. And also, if you want, you're more than welcome to look at the animation. It doesn't have to be right now. It's going to be 15 minutes, and I think we're going to do a premiere.
Oh yeah,
with some sort of sci-fi website, and so we're keeping it a little hidden, but frankly, someone will listen to this 20 years from now, and they want to hear about it. So I don't want to keep too much hidden.
All right.
Let me know when you got the song.
I got it. It's not. What is going on here?
Giving you trouble?
Yeah.
Maybe it's saying the wrong thing. Who knows?
No, it looked like it was the correct file. It's called Crisman.
Crisman ref, I think.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, I've got backups. I got backups of everything. There's this wonderful dude, I want to name drop, Demonic Sweaters, who did one of the first Crisman podcasts. I went to go listen to it, and it was gone. And then it was on archive.org. I went to go listen to it, gone. So strange. And once again, conspiracy. I'm losing my mind. And then I was like, why don't I just look the dude up? And I wrote to him, and he's like, oh, I just didn't like what I did. I wasn't so proud of that one, so I just got rid of it. I was like, oh, thank God. I thought they got to you. Oh, also, also, my iPad, I must have slept on it, but if you've ever locked yourself out of your iPad, it was like you're locked out for 20 years, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know how that happened, and I was just so worried.
Did you get
it enough time? I had to wipe it, and I had a backup. I have 2 computers. I backed it up on both. Neither backup functions. I lost everything from that movie, including all the inks, all the line art, even the brushes and stuff I custom built for this film, and all gone, all completely 100% gone. I had to start over to the extent that I already had the footage on my computer, thank God, which then I backed up religiously. But there was nowhere to go but forward, which was a wonderful feeling. I think I lost one scene. I wasn't that worried about it. It could have been a matter of, computer gone, iPad gone, but I found a rough backup of the brushes. I found a rough backup of the color schemes, and I was able to pretty much carry on. But once that happened, I was like, I have to finish this movie now. And we talked about how funny it would be if there are Men in Black agents and they are trying to put a stop to what I'm doing. And their whole goal is like, they haven't seen the movie yet and they don't know it's like this giant farce. Like they think it's like an actual biography.
That's when you were talking about it. I was actually thinking like, you could get meta with it. Like your story within the story is also potentially really entertaining, like you and your friends are digging this up, making this series, and then you start stirring up all this old stuff, and maybe you actually meet Crisman. He's not actually dead,
Oh, yeah. All these stories are coming back. We started writing this 3 years ago, maybe. It was right after we saw Maury. We never got around to seeing it. And we were looking up stuff on Crisman, and we found some of those Freedom of Information documents. And I remember we were in Burien walking around. Burien, they have UFO festivals, and they show Maury there a lot. But we're night owls. It was 2 a.m. We're walking around, and a web hits us in the face, like a spider web, like a piece of silk. What's that? And then my friend's like, I don't know. I don't feel anything. And he's like, wait, look at me in the lamplight. And he looks. We don't see anything. And we're still walking. We're like, okay, this is weird. I should make it very clear that I'm a couple years sober and I don't do any kind of crazy drugs. I don't even do legal drugs. So we're walking down the street. We think there's spider webs on us and we're freaking out now. We're like, as soon as we start reading about Crisman, weird stuff starts happening. And then what we figured out is it's like the ending of Charlotte's Web. It was spider season. And like every once in a while, little spider webs get caught in the wind, and they just kind of fall on top of you. Right. It was just so strange. Right as soon as we start looking the dude up, this happens and that happens. It's like, now we have to finish it. Why not? You have any luck with the file?
No, it's not playing for me. I don't know why. No audio is coming out. I have a feeling it's got something to do with my audio settings from doing this interview, and I don't think it has anything to do with the file that you sent.
Okay. I'd love for you to listen to it later. It's going to be great.
And I definitely will. I'm actually kind of aggravated that I can't listen to it now, but I think it's because I have like my speakers coming out of the computer, but my audio input is going in through this Yeti. I have a feeling that's it somehow, and I don't know how to troubleshoot it right now.
Totally. Hang on. I'm also, I want you to see the movie. You don't have to watch it now. It's not terribly long.
Oh, dude, I would love to, man. That's I would love to. I was actually going to ask, but I didn't want to.
No, you're more than welcome.
I'm ready to.
I'm ready to share it, but it's more about promotion, which I think is silly. I think when art's done, it's done. But I should mention we looked for funding during that first screening, and we wanted to do 30 film festivals, and we're going to thank everyone if we got the funding, if we could get all 30, and we did. We got that one time, we got that whole thing funded. Like, we don't even have a reason to ask for money. We're so fortunate that people were so supportive. So we're going to 30 film festivals, like minimum.
Man.
The rest of those all, if we can find more, I will finance them myself. I don't care. But I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, dude. That's real. Congratulations, man. That's really cool.
Yep. And I just threw you the files, and I'm throwing you the link to it. If you want to watch it now or later, I don't care. Is there anything else you want to talk about with Crisman?
Oh, so that's already, that's on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I think we're good on Crisman, but I am, let me ask, what do you have in store besides Crisman? What else you got coming?
Oh man, I don't know who I was before Crisman. Right now, that's my whole life.
Crisman is like the center of your creative output for now.
I'd say for now, I'm come hell or high water, I'm doing a Crisman comic, and I don't care if it gets done financed by other people. I don't care if I do it myself. I said I was going to do it, and I want to be good about sticking to these goals. I think as an artist, I worked on a movie for years that I never got done, and I realized now looking back, I'm making a movie. You haven't seen it yet. Mm-hmm. I made a movie. I'm making this comic. It's going to be great.
Hell yeah, man.
I'm happy to tell you about more stories if you want in the Crisman Chronicle lore, but none of them are. Here, let me grab them real quick. Just some fun ideas. There's this really weird one where he goes to Atlantis. He works for this it's not quite the OSS. It's an undocumented secret agency. I think it's going to be, the way we have it right now is whenever they mention it, it's a big censor bleep. Mm-hmm. Whenever he talks about it, he's going to get sent underwater, presumably to die, just to like get rid of him. We're sending him on a snipe hunt. He bumps into Atlantis. He finds out Atlantis is inhabited by these fish, half catfish, half people. And they start talking about how great the Aryan race is. And Crisman's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that, the Aryans came from giants. And he starts realizing slowly but surely that there's piles of bodies underneath the city. And that the Nazis have transformed into a fish-like race. And a lot of the gimmick of that is going to be Crisman. First of all, Crisman has to destroy Atlantis, which is hilarious to me. There's no Atlantis because Crisman had something to do with it. Secondly, we get to show, like, we're from we have all this future tech. Look at this, these portable computers. And then it's going to be a giant monitor, like a computer the size of a room, on top of some wheels, and they're like, look at our futuristic portable computers. That's the Moore Island one. Yeah, thank you, man. The Moore Island one is probably my best one. I'm very excited because I think the movie, I think you're a lot kinder to the movie than I was. And I think it's just that I got to be there and go, I would have done this. I would have done that.
Right.
A lot of those were budgetary restrictions. My Maury Island has some really good lines. Crisman, in my version, he moves to a strip club. He lives above a strip club. We decided that because the real Crisman did live with his parents a lot. He was kind of a neat in that way. He always got around by the benefit and good grace of other people. In my version, he lives above a strip club at the pier, and it's called Pier Pleasure. And he's got a little noir detective-y office up the stairs. And
Dude, this is so brilliant. This has to be manifested, man.
It has to. They're so fun to talk about. It's so fun to tell these little stories, and it takes place over 10 years. So all the way through the 40s, this adventure, and he specifically, it jumps forward almost a year every time. So you get to see him. I hate in a story when they start where they start. It doesn't have to be a cliffhanger, but they always start with something really interesting happening, and he's in a different location. The Bigfoot one, he starts off, he's up at Mount Rainier. He's already on a quest to find this lost agent, and they're like, "We're here to find Agent Redacted." And as it goes on, hey, Crisman, I don't know where Agent Redacted is. And then finally, by the end, I have to find my friend Ray, Agent Ray Dacted. It's just, it's so fun to be done.
Dude, yeah, man. I really hope this all gets completed and gets put out there. Dude, I would love to see it. It would be so awesome if it was just like hugely successful and got on Adult Swim or something. That'd be so cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna release him as a motion comic too. If I'm doing a comic, there's no other reason not to. And I'm putting together some really good voice casts. The other person I should name drop while I'm in the business of name dropping, I didn't even know this. Shaver, I don't know how familiar you are with Shaver, but he wrote the Shaver mystery, all those Darrow stories sort of as horror. But Ray Palmer at the time was more into the smut business. So if you ever look at Amazing Stories, by the time they got to it, it went from reprinting Asimov stories to this goofy pulp dare-and-do kind of these adventures. So in my version of the adventure, Shaver's kind of a pervert. And I got him played by Brock Baker, who he's known for doing a world-class Phil Hartman type of voice.
Okay.
So he's got all these lines, have you met these aliens, these Darrows? He's like, no, I owe alimony to them. I love Shaver. There's a bit where they get him out of a crate. They get him out of a crate and start interrogating him, and it says caution, contents, bananas. Oh, so many stupid jokes about Shaver.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. All right. I think I burned myself out on talking about Crisman.
Yeah, that's all good. So I feel bad